Okay, so a little different this week. I like to talk to different people that make the metal machine turn. And this week I'm joined by Dinah from Sunver Merchandising to talk about merchandise and bands. And I'm intrigued by the setups, the drunken guys that try to shout over the music, the sheer amount of boxes you see being carted in, and obviously less going out when you've sold some gear. So it's great to be talking to you. Thanks for joining me. Firstly, how are you?
First of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm great. Thank you very much.
And you are German, but you're in obviously another German speaking country, sorry, Austria. Are you on holiday or do you live there?
No, I live here. I fled the country. I'm in Austrian mountains now, far away from all the trouble, that when I'm off tour, I can actually chill.
Right. Are you near Meyerhofen by any chance?
I've never heard that name.
It's where there's a thing called snow bombing every April, and they have it in Meyerhofen. It's like a big, it's like a Ibiza in the snow, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's like, I think it's on the west side of Austria, but you're probably
wow, I'm so ignorant. No, I'm kind of in the middle. It's like 70 kilometers from Salzburg towards the mountains.
I see. It's a beautiful part of the world. Absolutely. Is the weather good?
Absolutely amazing. Yes.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's beautiful here as well, so I'm sure it's like that all over Europe. Let's get into it now. You sent me a nice bio to get me an idea of where you come from and everything. Now, you were a photographer before you went into tour merchandising first off. How did the merch thing start, and are you still taking photographs?
Correct. I started as event photographer back in, oh my God, I think now it's 10 years ago. I feel old right now, shit. So 10 years, no, actually way longer, but seriously, let's say 2014. That was my first tour where I was on as a photographer. So I started as a photographer, professional for like probably 5 years. And I worked with a lot of bands, a lot of festivals, and worked for a couple of magazines. So it went really, really good. And then one time I got an email from one of the bands I worked with, and they were like, "Hey, do you do merchandise? We need somebody doing merchandise." I was like, never done before, but at that point I studied advertisement psychology. So I was like, well, I'm an artist, so I probably know about displays. I know about accounting and all the other stuff on the back end. So probably I'm not the worst. So yeah, let's roll with it and see how it goes. And I went on tour with that band. And from that point on, I actually just got booked, because what happened is all the people that I worked with before in photography, they already knew from the tours I was on and the events I covered for them that I am somebody you can trust, right? When you're a photographer, you get behind the scenes, you go backstage, and we all know what happens backstage stays backstage, but you see that. So it's basically a testing ground. Hey, if I know I've worked with that photographer before, and like all the things that should be confidential stay confidential, she does a good work, she's reliable, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff that is basically a prerequisite for a good merchandiser, they already knew I had. So from that point on, when I was on that one tour and people saw I do merchandise, I just got emails afterwards like, "Hey, could you also do gear?" Blah, 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 blah. And from there it just went. And until today, 8 years later, for merchandise only, I never did a single advertisement. I'm just booked.
Word of mouth.
I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, it's amazing.
When you first started doing it, did the bands go, "Hey, well, can you bring your camera, do some pictures as well"?
You mean when I started merchandising and they asked like, "Hey,
there was a double up on something else. Get some pictures. Can you get some pictures backstage and do some stage shots?"
No, really never. I always did it like from myself. Like when I was at the merchandise, there was nothing going on because the band I worked for just played, and you are at a spot on the merchandise where you can see the show. I was like, yeah, sure, I take pictures. It's also for your own good, because if you take the pictures, you post them, or you do collaborations with a band, you get exposure as well, right? So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's how I found you, I think.
Maybe. Yeah. See, this is right. I mean, I do social media management as well, so I know about these things, and
it works.
It's like, use it when you're there, right?
Exactly. Now, Going into the nuts and bolts of a tour, how early in the tour process do you get involved in the merch? You know, do you source the merch, etc., or do you meet the merch on the road kind of thing?
It depends on the production, how long I work with the people that hire me. So I have clients I work with since 4 or 5 years.
Give us an
And
example.
I'm
Okay,
also,
the clients. Can you give us an example for the listeners who I know, obviously Abbott, that's where I've met you and saw you first.
yeah, I would have given that example. That's a good one. Let's stick with that. So Abbott, I work with for, let me lie, 4 years now. Yeah, I think. So when I started, this is a good example. When I started, I basically got them, no, oh, maybe. So let's roll back. Abbott is the same management as does Beyond the Gates. Shout
Right.
out to them. They're amazing. Tourgrim, if you ever listen to this, amazing management. So I work with them for Beyond the Gates, that is a festival in Norway, and for Abbott. When I started working with them, I basically got the whole thing and we just rolled with it.
Right.
And then when it progressed, it was like I got more and more involved and we talked about the design line beforehand. So I was getting involved in like, okay, adjusting the designs, giving my input from all the experience I have. Okay, what will work in Europe? What will work in the certain countries we go into? It's very different, for example, for America or what so on. So you could say, as a general, the longer I work for bands, earlier involved I get. And nowadays, I also offer it to bands. For example, I have a tour coming up with Ultimas and Got Dethroned in October and November. Yeah, no, yes, no, in September and October. Still have to get this right. In September, October, people go there. It will be an amazing tour. With Ultimas, I worked before. So
Yeah, that was the first time I saw Abbott was with Ultima
yeah,
supporting.
yeah, that was the
show.
tour, right?
Yeah.
2020, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
so with them, I worked before. They know I do my job good. They can trust me. So they basically be like, okay, help us get the design line together. So I work with them. With Got Dethroned, I never worked before, and I do this now on every tour. I offer the bands, hey, listen, I can help you with printing the merch because I'm also a subcontractor to a printing company. So I can get you the better prices. I can assure that the printer I work with delivers on tour when we need it, has a restock on point, and there's a good communication because, as you might know, this is always a thing that gets fucked up on tours and where a lot of money is on the line. So I'm like, listen, I can help with that. I can give my input on the design. If you need these designs, I can help you with sourcing some designs and so on. So it really depends on the band.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's like, I can understand that some territories might prefer like maybe a singlet or a tank top or back designs and sleeve designs and stuff like that. But I didn't realize that it's different in the States to Europe, for example.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, now it's changing a bit. But for example, a few years back, trying to sell a white shirt,
Yeah.
especially in certain countries, try to sell. This is a competition for every merchandise. Try to sell a white shirt in Italy to a
Really?
metal audience. Good luck. And
Really?
when you go to the States, almost in every state, white shirts are going.
Right.
Oftentimes even better than black shirts in a metal audience because the metal audience has a different background. It comes from punk. So colors are like
Interesting.
just more interesting for the people. Yeah.
This is why I got you on the show for this information. This is what I want to know. This is good. This is good. Now take me through an average show day on the road. You know, no matter how monotonous it is, the average show, what time does it all start? What time do you get to venues? You know, let us know what happens.
All right. Typical show day for me. So I'm a health nut. So
We're going to get into that.
Different.
I've got questions regarding that, but you can touch on it now. Go on.
That's right. So just saying I'm a health nut, that means my day starts with getting up, preferably if the bus is already there 3 hours before doors, that I have 3 hours to find a gym, go to the gym, do my workout, preferably have a sauna there as well to like, right? It's important. And then I'll be at load in, at venue get in at around 11, 12, depending on the production. We load in. And then I go through my list I have from the previous day where I mark down, okay, do I need restock? And then I take care about the restock and the setup. Depending on the production, that takes either 40 minutes or 4 hours. It really depends. They're like, sometimes I handle 3 or 4 bands on one tour, and they have, I think the biggest I had was 130 items on one tour.
Wow.
So setting this all up in a very elaborate way just takes time. Basically, I do this until doors. Sometimes I have free time when the doors are late, and I will use it to either get like behind my accounting, sort of some shipping. I do social media as well. So whenever I have free time on tour, I'm just in the social media accounts working on other tours. I work for a couple of different bands. So if I have time, I'll work on something else.
Yeah.
A lot of times we also do, just items where I could occupy myself. For example, with a lot of bands, we paint these drum heads. So when I have time, I can paint drum heads.
Nice.
It's like, so I will find a way. Usually I have no free time until doors, except for an hour where I just eat. And then outdoors, then you sell.
Yeah.
And then you have the shows, and then the show is over, and then you pack your stuff, you load out, and then you go with the bus. And usually when everybody's sitting downstairs and chats, parties, has a beer or something, I'm in the back or front lounge, do the accounting, prep for the next day that I know what to get, and then I just go to bed.
So no party.
It's very boring.
No party for Diana because she's working all the time.
Yeah, mostly. So a lot of people complain that they actually never see me socialize or party on tour, but maybe if I'm a 5 weeks tour, maybe 2 times.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And does that include all the auditing throughout the day, making sure the count's correct, making sure there's nothing gone missing, no Abbott's not, Olaf's not come along and nicks the t-shirt for the backstage or something. All that must be time consuming as well.
Yes. Like, I mean, my system now is when I'm the only merchandise, it actually saves a lot of time because you're the only person that touches the merch. So you have a very good overview. Where's stuff? Where did I pack stuff? How did I do it? And so on. So the less people are involved, the fewer the margin for error. It is much more time consuming when I have second sellers every day.
Sure.
So that's a whole nother level. And then you need to double check a lot of things. So yeah,
sure. Sure. I can
that is a part too.
Now, very interesting. Yesterday, I read an interview with Exodus bass player Jack Gibson, who said, to quote him, this is what he said: "We don't sell shit for records. If we don't go out and sell t-shirts, we don't make money. I'm a t-shirt salesman. I'm not a musician." Do you see how important merch is for bands these days? And can you explain to gig goers how important a sale is to a band?
Absolutely. So for most bands, unless you're very, very big, it will be the merchandise where the bands make the actual money. For if you sell records, I mean, where do you get the money from? I mean, if you sell records online, okay, you get shit from Spotify, maybe you make a bit on Bandcamp, then you have your label. It depends on your contract, how much you get back. Usually not much, because a lot of goes into video production, into just all the expenses the label advances, and you just pay back with the record sales. So band usually never sees really anything of record sales. So the only time band makes money is when they go on tour or have shows. And then usually, unless they're very big, and even then, they make money on the merch, because usually the production nowadays is so expensive with nightliner costs, with like if you have a more advanced show with the light you need to rent, with all the crew you need to pay, with pyro shows, with everything, usually you make the money on the merch. So that is very important for the bands. And basically, if there were no merch, your bands would go broke or couldn't do what they want.
Yeah. Totally agree. It's so important for everyone to go out, at least buy, especially for the support acts as well. You got to buy the t-shirts so they can put fuel in their van. It's so important. Now, here's a quick question for you. Which size sells out the fastest? XL.
Depends on if you order it smart. But what is bought the most is L and XL. It also depends where you go. Like in the States, it's definitely XL.
XXL.
Here, it's L. A few years, no, like before COVID, it actually is really funny. After COVID, it changed. Like everything moved a size up after COVID.
Really?
No joke.
That's like you're part of a social experiment, Dinah. It's like you got this information that no one else has. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah, you really, and actually now it moves back. So there was a couple of times where we really messed up a bit in the order because we didn't account for that, or we tried, but not enough. And the first 2 years after COVID, we always underestimated the bigger sizes. And then you actually saw that people got back on track and back to health, because then it went backwards.
Right.
And the people got there. It's so interesting.
Wow. That's so interesting. Now, you like to document the cities that you visit and do tour vids on your Instagram. And with that in mind, what is your favorite place to visit? Because when a band comes up with a tour and says, "Hey, Dinah, will you come on tour with us?" Your eyes must go up and down the schedule, and you get excited when you see, "Oh, we're going to Barcelona again," or what gets, where do you see you? Yes, we're going to go there again.
Two things there. It depends very much where I focus on. Is it a good venue where I'm excited about, okay, everything is easy logistics, the organizers are very kind, like the catering is taken care of, I have a good spot, and I will have excellent sales. This is one thing. So tour wise, I can give a couple of examples in a minute. And then the other thing is, okay, what is the routing like? Where are the day offs? Because this is the only time when I see something.
Yeah.
Where are the day offs? For the day offs, like city-wise, which is probably interesting for the musicians that have time to explore it, I love Porto in Portugal. It's just one of the most beautiful cities, I think, in entire Europe. And Geneva, and literally mostly all the Swiss cities, because everything is clean, water, mountains are nearby, and I love to just take a swim, even in winter.
Yeah, because
this is my favorite, and
I saw that you went surfing in Barcelona in January.
Oh yeah, but they had a wetsuit. I rented a wetsuit. I mean, like, there's no way I go an hour surfing. Yeah, that was amazing. So I took up surfing like half a year ago. So now I'm actually trying, and I will bring my freaking surfboard on my next tour.
Wow.
You bet.
Get that in the bus.
Because I now found out that I surf in how many cities you can actually surf. Right. So yeah, I surfed in Barcelona, and I surfed in Porto as well.
Awesome.
So I love cities where waves as well, if I have the time.
Good.
Yeah.
That goes perfectly.
What I wanted to add.
Go on.
Yeah, what I wanted to add, and a huge shout out to these venues. Like when I see routing, and I see these venues where I'm like, okay, everything is already figured out in my head. There's like no margin for error, and sales will be amazing. It's Hellraiser Leipzig. Some people that hear that will cringe because for some it's not an easy venue, because it's totally at the back end of everything. It's like in the middle of nowhere. So if you're there on a Sunday, there's no chance you get anything.
Right.
Like you have to prepare if you go there.
Sure. Yeah, I can believe.
But venue wise, it's absolutely amazing. For sales, it's amazing. Mannheim is another location. Basically, no matter where you are. Yeah, and like there are a couple of other venues where you're like, fuck yeah. And then you're like on some, I will not mention names, but on some venues you're like, you see them on the bill and you're already like, oh fuck no.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Now,
yeah, we all know what I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. Now, just tapping into talking about surfing, and you mentioned fitness earlier. You're a fitness woman, right? You keep fit, you live a good, healthy lifestyle. But the question on my lips, and many others, how do you manage to keep this on the road where we all know these takeaways and poor sleep and bad choices? How do you keep focused for, weeks at a time?
Very great question. So I made it my mission in the last years to figure this out. I'm a life and health coach and personal trainer since now 8 years. And as we probably all know, touring is the most hostile environment for keeping fit and healthy. So to bring these two things together is a thing. And I have a lot of health interested and like sport friends that really struggle with that on tour. So how to keep your routine, how to eat healthy, how to actually not get triggered by alcohol or fast food. That is basically around you 24/7. And this tour environment kind of bullies you oftentimes into an unhealthy lifestyle. So what do? I just stick to my routine. So the good thing for me is I really need it also for my mental health, because I'm talking to maybe 500 people a day when I do merchandise, and I'm busy 24/7. So I need 2 hours a day for myself. And basically the only time I get that is when I fuck off in the gym early when nobody's awake, do my workout, are in my own mind. And so it becomes, it just is a good thing for me that rewards me every time I do it, because I'm like, okay, I cannot deal with this right now mentally. So I go to the gym. It rewards me for the silence I have. And this is how I repeat it, right? Day after day. And then for the nutrition part, I figured out, so as you basically can imagine, what I eat will be very different from maybe the usual musician who goes on tour, eats a pizza and doesn't care about whatever. So a very restricted, a lot of people would call it restrictive diet. So, and you also have the issue that you cannot really write a very complicated instruction on a hospitality writer, because then everybody ignores and it's just like, what the fuck is this, right? So what I did is I tried to reduce it as much as possible. And might be a good tip for people that are allergic or sensitive to a lot of foods, because I know quite some people in the touring world that are, and where they write everything they cannot read or don't want to eat on a writer, and every organizer is completely overwhelmed, because if you write on a hospitality writer what you don't eat, everybody's asking, what the fuck does this person eat?
Yeah.
So what I did is like, I compressed whatever my diet is into one sentence that has 3 words. So at the moment it's like low carb, gluten free.
Yeah.
That's very short. If the person knows what it means, it's another question. But just write it on there. By now, usually every European organizer I've worked with in the past before knows by now what it means.
Yeah.
So actually teach people.
Yeah.
This is a story. Going back to, write on the writer, put 1 food on or 2 foods on you could survive on for an entire tour. So for me, it's avocados and eggs. If I go on a tour, and especially if I've never worked with that production before and I don't know, okay, what does a band usually eat? What's usually there? I'm like, hey, could you just put 2 avocados and eggs on the get-in writer? And I know, like, even if they mess up everything else, I have eggs and avocado to eat for 5 weeks, and there's a superfood, so I'm good.
Yeah, that's good. And does any of the guys who are on a long tour, like any of the band members, whether it's headline band or Spock, come up to you halfway through the tour and go, Diana, I'm flagging, I need some help. Can you offer me some advice? Did they ever get that? Or at that point, do they not care?
Usually it actually happens before we even go on a tour. That they're already in the message, just like,
how often do they stick to it?
I haven't worked very rarely.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely. I often get the message, we can work out together, accountability partner, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, this is my 2 hours where time. I'm like alone.
Yeah. Totally get
so, sometimes I do it. Sometimes it's great, but not all the time. But now it's actually, there's a movement, the guitarist of I Am Morbid or Doro or, where does he play? Northtail plays in Bill Hudson. And I started when we were on tour with, I Am Morbid and Belfigor, that was the tour we were on. And the now monitor guy for Deep Purple, Ian, we started the movement we called Don't Be a Lazy Ass. And we basically post workouts of us being on tour wherever. And that took actually some attention and some wins. So now actually more and more musicians are tagging us online and like showing how they work out. And It's actually a little movement now that people see like, okay, these guys that are basically on the road 8 months a year do it So I don't really have an excuse.
Yeah. So with that in mind, and what my next question was, what advice do you give an artist who's about to hit the road for a few weeks? Just something, in a nutshell. What would you say?
First of all, so three things. First of all, be aware that on a tour, it usually only goes downhill, never uphill. So the moment you go downhill, you can only maintain that level, but rarely have the resources to go up again. So just do not party or do anything except for the first 2 weeks. Like, you will not recover. Period.
Right. I see.
First thing, very basic.
Yeah.
Second thing is put something, check the rider, put something on the rider that you know is healthy, that you know gives energy, that you could live on if everything goes to shit, could live on for the entire duration of the tour.
Yeah.
And then set a routine. Like, set a routine in your mind and stick to it. Like, before the tour, and don't make it too hard. Like, don't say, I go to the gym every day for an hour. You cannot maintain that. You have a weird schedule one day, you're out, and then you might feel guilty and don't do it.
Yeah,
say like, okay, I work out every day for 10 minutes, no matter where. Pack your resistance bands, that's it, and it goes from there. Just make like small things.
Yeah. With you. Good advice. Now, from a fan's perspective, we buy tickets, we go to shows, we probably see bands once, maybe twice if you're a super fan, but you're at the table if the table's inside the hall, and you get to see the show day in, day out. What's that like? And, obviously you're going to wear some form of ear defenders, but when you're seeing the show repetitively day in, day out, I know it's a job and everything, but does it get a little bit repetitive, shall we say?
No. I mean, first of all, usually I'm busy with sales anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't usually get that much, or even when I don't have sales, I'm in my phone doing some inventory stuff. So I don't really have time to pay attention. So I actually really value it.
Yeah.
When there's one day where I don't have that much to do and I actually can see the show consciously for a few songs.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful. It doesn't get boring, no.
Obviously, merch tables have changed over the years. It used to be like a t-shirt. If you're lucky, you got a hoodie. Now you said it's like 100, you had 130 items, What's the craziest thing a band sold? I mean, we're seeing skins, we're seeing sticks, we're seeing signed set lists, but what's the craziest thing that you've seen? The guy comes to you and says, I want to sell this rag that I used on stage. What is it? There must be something.
Actually, funny. Okay, the craziest thing, the first thing I thought of was, I don't remember the band, but it was a wizard wand, a self-made painted wizard wand. Right. And the craziest thing is I sold all of them.
Really?
Yes. I mean, it's a cool thing, but when I first saw that, I was like, a wizard wand, a okay. I mean,
wow.
It worked, but that was the craziest item so far. Yeah.
What shouldn't be sold?
What shouldn't be sold?
Yeah.
Well, please don't get the idea to sell your worn underwear, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Doing the audit of that every day. What's the maddest thing someone said to you at a merch table? Some crazy request or something stupid?
Oh, well, you need to go to my Instagram and watch those videos where I collected these answers. There are so many.
Really?
I cannot even recall. Yeah, I should take on this again and do more of it, because every merchandiser knows the merchandise quiz where you can tick off everything that people say to you that is dumb. And usually you tick off everything during a tour. I can give you a few examples. Is this an Easter egg behind your merch when I have avocado there? Or, a really great one is when you imagine me standing there with like 20 shirts behind me. A guy comes up and is like, do you sell shirts?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Or
you're at a Abbat production, was very funny. And the guy comes up like, do you sell Sodom shirts? I'm like, well, is Sodom playing today? Like,
yeah. Wow.
No.
Wow.
But do you sell Sodom shirts? I was like, no.
Yeah,
but
I get the idea.
It's like every day you get amazed. Actually, I love it because it's so funny. It's like comedy. It's free comedy for me. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And it keeps it entertaining every night. What's someone going to say next?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now I've seen your use of drumsticks on your phone, so you can get a good telescopic view of the crowd. What's your opinion with the amount of hundreds of shows that you've been to? What's your opinion of phones at gigs? Do you support the artists some artists are starting to like ban them or try and stop use of phones? What's your opinion on that?
Some artists will hate me for that. Phones are not going away anytime soon, and everybody has
Hmm.
them. So I work oftentimes in occult black metal settings. There are a few festivals where it's very, very exclusive. And the policy is like, okay, please don't use your phones. It's not enforced, but it's like a common understanding. And usually, if you're in that type of atmosphere of this, like a special artist, for example, Vatane is such an artist where the audience knows just take one photo or maybe film the intro, but then just
Put it away.
Enjoy the show and like keep your phone away. It goes with that. And then you have other bands that actually use the phones of the audience where like, okay,
on the lights,
raise your phones and like light them up, and you have this like, it looks really shit from the back, by the way, but it looks amazing from the front.
Looks good for them. Yeah. Looks good for them.
And I'm always so sad because I'm always like, can we just go back to the lighters? But it will not happen. Like, let's be honest, it will not happen. The phones are there, so might as well use them. There are other artists that grab the phones from the audience, like do a cool video. It goes viral, so they have free promos. So I'm like, okay, if you're not one of these bands where it's like a common understanding that you don't use your phone, just use it from the audience. But I totally encourage the policy that you're not allowed to film the entire show. So if you have people that you really see that record the entire show and basically then do money off the band, because what will happen is they put the video online on their YouTube channel and they earn through the views. So they earn money off that artist. This is not okay.
No, I agree with that. Totally agree with that. Do you ever get involved in any extra things you have to do at gigs, for example? Do you ever, has ABBA or anyone asked you to help with corpse paint, or do you get like roped in to do all the jobs, or is it focused on like, you're so busy anyway, you haven't got time for anything else?
Yeah, I'm so busy anyway, like literally nobody asks the question.
That you said that.
And you don't even see me around. You don't even have the chance to ask me a question because I'm like at my merch, I do my merch. I'm like, I don't have time for it.
Sure. What's the downside of being on the road for most of the year?
Private life. So that's private life and to figure out your routine. And a healthy lifestyle, because I mean, we talked about it. It's just difficult. I have it nailed down pretty okay by now, but the big part is a private life, because like how do you want to build a private, stable life, like a life partner or something else, if you're just away all the time? I mean, you're basically forced to search in that environment, which I don't want to, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's just, I haven't figured this out by now. I'm like, okay, you cannot really get to know new people, because if you get to know new people, the next thing is you'll be on a 2 weeks or 6 weeks tour even. So I'm like, okay, I haven't figured this out yet, but all right.
Is it hard to, when a tour does end, when you do get to go home, is it hard to readjust?
Yes. I actually talked about this with a friend who has a family recently, and he has a kid and a wife. And he was like, it's so bad when I go back home that now we have the policy. Before I go home, I go somewhere else for 3 or 2 days and decompress. Right. And I feel the same way. I've talked with a couple of people about it. You need like 2 or 3 days, especially when you come from longer productions, to just decompress, because this instant, especially when you have a family, where you come home and things are expected from you, and like do your laundry, do the dishes, get up early, take care about your kid, and like whatnot. If you go from a really exhausting productions right into that life, it's challenging. So it takes time to adjust. Yes, definitely.
A few more questions, Dan, if you got the time. First off, I've got to ask you this one, because you spend so long on the road. You must have a funny go-to road story for us. Just one that pops into your head that someone says, if someone asks this question, like dumbass me's just asked, what do you come back with?
I'll have a whole tour of that. We had one tour that was a whole entertainment for half the metal community. Well, actually, I think Doro, the metal queen, started me following because of that, which was pretty funny. That was the tour with Belfigur and I Am Morbid,
Uh-huh.
and our bus drivers had continuous troubles. So we got two bus drivers, where the first one only ever drove tourist buses, so no overnight buses, and the second one had driven a bus for 3 days, I think. And none of the two could back up a trailer. So, I mean, you need to back up a trailer basically in almost every venue, but they didn't dare. So every day we woke up, there was no trailer at the bus, and we needed to search for the trailer because they always left it like somewhere on the road.
No.
And just drove in the bus. So every day we had to search for that trailer. And there's so many stories. They drove into Brussels into the no bus zone and got stuck in the pass, like in the
pedestrian street or something.
In the walkway only zone. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
They got stuck there, so we left to the gym and let them figure it out. Or it was somewhere in the UK. The venue, we had to get out, and the bus had to drive around and park at the back of the venue. So we got out and waited for the bus. Would have taken 2 minutes to get to the back of the venue that we could load in. What happened is the bus took off for 2 hours, did a circle. We didn't even know what it did. Did a circle around the entire city, probably, and left us there at the venue for 2 hours. I mean, that was a tour. Every day we had an exciting adventure.
Have you seen them since? Are they quit their jobs?
They also, I hope so. We got rid of them, like, I think somewhere mid-tour, and I so much appreciate our tour manager back then who had to deal with them. Oh, now I remember. They also drove us into the wrong country, and we luckily realized soon enough. They seriously drove us into the wrong country.
It's like a comedy show.
And they also,
It's like a comedy show.
This is why so many people started following me, because I put it out instead of, you could go angry, or we were like, we just document it and just make it an adventurous entertainment for everybody to follow. So we had actually a lot of fun on this tour.
Funny.
Yeah.
Funny. Now, it's taken me a while to get through to this, but what got you into music and what got you into metal in general? What were your go-to influences to get to where you are now, to be following around, working with the bands you're with?
What got me into metal were my two friends from high school that randomly started listening to Rammstein. And I was leading the history library back then. So always in the school breaks, we were going there listening to music. And then they started bringing Rammstein. And then it quickly went to Dimmu Borgir and Cradle of Filth, which were my two bands to start with. And then straight to Misery Index, Marduk, Funeral Mist, and very fast, very extreme.
Yeah.
And I just loved the raw, and I loved the raw expression and the emotion. And that went hand in hand with my photography, because what I loved when I started taking pictures of these live events is most people wear a mask when they are in society in their regular life. So they pretend to be somebody they are not. And usually it's very hard to get to know people at a deep core level. And when they are on stage, they show that, especially on these very extreme music forms, and they show who they are on stage and what demons they have inside, or who they really are, and express it. So I was drawn to that authentic expression the musicians show on stage, and then the visual surrounding you build on a stage to enhance that feeling.
Yeah. What new bands are you checking out? Anything exciting?
That's a very difficult question, because
I bet you're surrounded by new bands all the time, because obviously with the tours you do, you get introduced to new bands all the time, I'm sure.
So new bands I was introduced to while touring. That's a while back, because now I work with them. I was super impressed by Savage Existence from Costa Rica. I was hired by Ross the Boss when we were on tour now a year and a half back. And they were the opening band, and they blew me away.
Right.
So that is a band you should check out. The new single is coming out when the show is out, it will be already out, but the new album is coming out. Savage Existence from Costa Rica. Then by now they are really, really popular. But when I saw them the first time, or heard about them the first time, was Ad Infinitum. It's like
Yeah.
Melissa Bonnie, the singer, like
Yeah.
so amazing. Just definitely check that band out. Probably you know it, right?
I've had Melissa on the show before. I've spoke to Melissa.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, she's
So
great.
absolutely amazing. And
So
but I don't actually get in touch with so many new
right.
bands because I mostly work.
Yeah.
And the tour is so long. I mean, you can only do like, what is it, like maximum 8 tours, depending on the length in a year,
Yeah.
or maybe 10. That's not that many bands.
No, you're right. You're right. Do you ever get sorry, before I even say, do you ever get tempted to play an instrument? Do you play an instrument? Have you ever been tempted to be in a band yourself?
Oh, actually, when I was a teenager, I played in the Philharmonic Orchestra.
Wow. Wow. What instrument?
Yeah, violin.
Wow. Wow. It's pretty high standard.
Yes, and thank you. Yeah, I played violin.
Have you ever been asked to perform on any albums or anything?
No musician. This is probably the first time anybody hears about that because no of my metal friends know that. Like, no, really? Nobody. It's the first time I mentioned it.
You give me exclusives. Yeah. Wow. We need to get you on an album.
So, oh no, like I needed to figure out to clone myself first. I stopped playing the violin because I needed to choose. Like when I do something, I want to do it good. And there's only so much time in a day. And when I started back then was photography, and I also painted. So I was like on the visual side, and was like, okay, I either can paint and do photography and get into this and get really good at it, or I can play an instrument. There's no way I can do this both on a good level. So I'm like, okay, I make the conscious decision. I put this aside. Right. And focus on that.
For now, you never know. You can go back to it.
For now. But maybe.
What bands merch would you like to get hold of and be in control of? Because there's so many bands like Behemoth, they have such a good merch outlet now, and Rammstein have such a good merch outlet now, for example. There's so much belt buckles to, coffee and all sorts. Who would you like to work with in the future?
Dimmu Borgir.
Really?
I'm manifesting 25. Yeah. I want a Dimmu Borgir. Yeah, that's actually the funny thing is, like, most bands I had on my list, I already ticked off, working for them either on a tour or one time.
Yeah.
I would also love to work with Hilo more. I was on one event as a substitute.
Yeah.
And this is the band I love so much, from the people authenticity, like from everything they do. So I would love Heilung, Dimmu Borgir, and then I need to figure out, like, I actually want to do just that I can say I did it, Rammstein once, and pop up
a massive lorry
just on my bio, like, this is something like everybody wants to do just once, and it's like, okay, I did that, but everything else, everything I had on my bucket list, I already did. So I'm like, I need a new bucket list now.
Sure. Right. Give me a track to play next from one of the bands you've worked with.
Camelot, Soul Society, because they never played it live when I was on tour with them all the time, and it's my favorite track from back when I was a teenager.
Camelot, Soul Society, happening.
Yes.
Doing it. It's coming up next. And finally, my very last question, Diana. What's the most used emoji in your phone?
A unicorn.
Unicorn. Like it. Nice.
A unicorn.
Diana, thanks so much for the fantastic insight to touring and everything merch and beyond. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.